So good evening, ma'am. Good evening, sir. Good evening to everyone present over here, to all the students. And so on behalf of CII, myself, Nandini, and we have our program chair from IMT Hyderabad, Professor Dr. Kalyan Chakravarti with us. And so this is a joint venture between CII Institute of Logistics and IMT Hyderabad, where we run already successfully running a 2-year program in logistics and supply chain management. Already students have completed 2 semesters and they are on to the internship. So now we have second batch is going to come. So this is the outreach session, and where in fact we wanted to propagate to the students that logistics is not only for a men field, women is also highly successful in this sector. So that is why so we are honored to invite you, ma'am, for this session, for this outreach session, where women are there in the LSCM field also. So we are delighted to hear from you today. Meanwhile, we have our eminent professor, Dr. Kalyan Chakravarti, who is the program chair for this MBA LSCM, who extends a lot of support for us for running successfully for this program. So welcome you, sir. Good evening to you. So let me quickly take through the profile of Dr. Seema. Dr. Simi is also, yes, ma'am, please.
Sorry, can I can't see any students. Is this on purpose or it's by
So can we request all the students to switch on their videos, please? Students, this is the request from the guest. So requesting everyone to please switch on your videos.
I hope to bump into some of you in Mumbai streets sometime, so I should at least know who am I talking to.
Okay. Yeah. So Dr. Simi is also known as Dr. Supply Chain in the industry circle because of her specialization in philosophy of supply chain. She is an engineer, MBA from XLRI, and a doctor of naturopathy. She has 18 plus years of industry experience in Fortune 100 companies like CSC, Aditya Birla Group, Starbucks, Amazon, and Unilever. Currently, she is working as vertical head for South Asia region at Maersk. She also holds certification for Chief Executive Officer program from IIML. On a personal front, Dr. Seema has a vast background in Eastern philosophy. She is trained in Zen and Taoism from Tao Zen Dojo and certified in Jeet Kune Do, Art and Philosophy of Bruce Lee from Asian Center of JKD. She has spent more than 10 years in the study of Eastern philosophies and stress management. She holds 3rd degree black belt in unarmed combat and survival with more than 15 years of combat training, testimony to her seriously study of mind, body, and spirit, besides being a national level badminton player, mountaineer, and a certified Zumba instructor. She is called all over to lecture on application of philosophy to business management for improving work and process efficiency. Ma'am, too much into your profile. We are really great to have you today, especially a very right person to have a multifaceted personalities today. We have, so I'm not going to take too much of time. So I'm handing over to our professor, Dr. Kalyan, to take this session forward. Welcome, ma'am.
Thanks, Nandini.
Thanks a lot, Ms. Nandini and Dr. Simi. It's a pleasure and an honor to converse with you this evening and have you spend some time with our to-be students here on the forum. The profile that Nandini has just read out is itself, substantial proof of your, versatility, multifaceted, personality that is there. I'm a bit curious. So the way we will do this is it's an hour-long session, ma'am. And as Ms. Nandini has already updated the idea. So the student that you see here are yet to join IMT. These students are from various programs that IMT offers. And we share information with students in terms of, what are the potential opportunities that exist across different sectors so that students make an informed choice. And the objective of this specific session is to encourage particularly girl students to look at logistics and supply chain as a career. And you are the best person for putting forth that particular perspective. So that is the objective behind the session. The way we will do is I have a few questions, but it's pretty much a free flow. You're welcome to take off from any of the questions to anywhere that you think is appropriate. And students, you folks are all totally welcome to interrupt the conversation anytime. You have a very valuable 1 hour time with one of the most renowned individual in supply chain, in addition to her being a woman. So make full use of the time. So you are welcome to interrupt us anytime and ask questions if you have any, right? With no further ado, but before I ask you any question, I am a bit curious. Why or how doctor supply chain? I mean, is there a story behind that? Yeah.
Yeah. So normally when the moment you hear somebody saying doctor so and so, it's assumed that the person is treating someone or healing someone, right? And so wherever I go, the moment I say I'm Dr. Seema Narera, blah, 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 and immediately say, so what are you doing in logistics? Why are you in this forum? And, I mean, almost everyone I meet, that's the first question. And then like, oh, so you're a doctor and you're doing supply chain. And after some time, they would start joining the two words. So you're a doctor and doing supply chain. So it became doctor supply chain. And in a way, it's easy for people to remember that keyword, because otherwise they just wonder. So now it becomes a doctorate, though I've not done doctorate in supply chain, but they just seem to, I'm healing people's supply chain instead of healing people's body. So now it's making sense to people. I don't have to explain it to them why I am a doctor and I'm doing logistics and supply chain. So now it's become kind of a pet word for people to use for me.
It's stuck on, and very appropriate. I would say so. Yeah. Yeah. And also, ma'am, we share the same alma mater. I am Lucknow. I am a PhD from I am Lucknow, and
lovely.
I see that you've done some program from CEO program from I am Lucknow. So it's double pleasure, so to speak.
Lovely. Lovely.
Yeah. So with your permission, then let's move on.
Sure.
Firstly, I would, if you could, trace your, professional journey to your students, the ups, downs, challenges, good, bad. So if there are any takeaways that students can have from your own professional experience.
Yeah. So it's, I don't think many students would believe, but just to tell you, when I started my career in 2003, after I finished my engineering, I would have never imagined where I'm today. And why I want to tell you this is that life unfolds in various ways. Career options unfolds in various ways. And nobody should start with saying, I want to do this. And it's good that you are clear that, good to have some clarity. But sometimes, the solutions are not so clear at early stage of your career. And then you realize as time goes on what works for you, what doesn't work for you. So when I started I did my engineering in electronics, and I wanted to actually be a scientist. And I think in college, everybody wants to be a pilot or a scientist or an actor. I think, almost everyone, nobody would have imagined a career in logistics. I didn't even know there is a career in logistics and supply chain then, though we used to study some bit of operations, but I used to think those are the people who work in factories and they just make sure that the laborers do their job. So I didn't fancy it much. I didn't go into, being a scientist means you have to research something, and then you have to get into a research institute, which, and I'm talking about 2003. I'm not talking about now, where the world is a very different place. India is a very different place, where being scientist means you either go to ISRO or go to DRDO or go to BARC. Those are the only three options. And they didn't seem enticing to me. I felt like I'll get into one more government office where there will be files thrown from one table to another and no work would be done. So I don't want to do it. So then what's left? Okay, no worries. Let's go to corporate sector and we'll see what happens. And then I worked in CSC, as Nandini read in my resume, where I did project management. and that project management was not I mean, I did my engineering in electronics, but that project management was IT project management. So I practically started from zero, learning everything about how servers are installed, what does commissioning and decommissioning of server means. I had no idea, but all I knew is there was a desire to learn, and there was desire to excel in whatever I do. And I think those two things for starting a career are good enough. If you have the intent to learn and the aptitude to learn, I think that's good enough. And then I did my MBA. When I did my MBA, I loved finance as a subject. I always liked finance and maths and now things which are dealing with numbers, because they are absolute science. There are no gray areas. Like marketing has gray areas that work, an idea can work or can't work. Nobody can predict, right? If it works, then there is always a nice story behind it. If it doesn't work, then there is always a nice story behind it. But in finance, either it's a ROI positive or ROI negative. There is nothing in between. So I used to like finance because of that, and I thought I will get into finance. Then I did my MBA in finance and economics, and I did start my career with finance. And after some time, I realized that while it's in exact science, but nothing is wrong with finance. I'm not against finance professionals, but it's all about doing everything in Excel sheets, right? When those numbers really come in practice, whatever you have plans are, great ROI projections, etc. Life is very different. It doesn't work that way, right? And I felt I'm living in like a lab, which is my Excel sheet, and world is very different. And when I talk to the world, they would say, okay, come out of your Excel sheet. You don't know the reality. So just forget giving gyan, right? And that's where I felt that, life is not driven by Excel sheets. So let's do something more than that. And then I got a chance to, so while I was in Aditya Birla Group, I got a chance to work in finance. I got a chance to do marketing, do sales, do a little bit of operations as well. And I found that, finally, when there is a problem which a business has to solve, it doesn't get solved by a finance guy or a marketing guy or a supply chain guy. It's a business problem which involves all of this. So might as well, one should be open-minded to do all of that. And then when I started my journey, I found somehow that operations is basically the guys who are executing. Sales are the guys who get orders. Operations are the guys who execute, and finance are the guys who finally account good, bad, ugly, right? And I felt operations is some part which is truly making things happen. I know it's a word which, if I say, my other functional colleagues will not like it, but I really felt that, and I thought I will plunge into it because I don't want to be in my lab. Let me get into this. And I started with doing operations for Aditya Birla Retail. That is the time when the modern trade was just picking up and was supposed to be what quick commerce is today. I mean, there was no e-com and quick commerce then. I'm talking about 2008, 2009. And I started enjoying it. After finance, when I jumped into operations and supply chain, I felt, yes, this is where really rubber hits the road. This is how things happen. And there is a lot of adrenaline to what I do. There is a lot of meat in the actions which are taking place. And that's how I got sort of attracted to supply chain after having started my MBA with full focus. I want to do finance. I am not taking any operations subject. I'm not taking supply chain electives. I'm doing all finance and options and futures and portfolio management, blah, blah, blah. I studied all that jargon and I'm doing supply chain. So what I want to say, and then of course, when I did supply chain, I started with Aditya Birla Retail, then I did Unilever, then I went to Starbucks, completely different ball game. Then I worked in Amazon, and now I'm doing logistics sales. So I'm in Maersk. We are providing integrated logistics solutions to companies. So you can say I'm in sales function, but really I'm doing operations for companies. So it's so what I'm trying to say is for students, what the message that I'm trying to give is while I enjoy supply chain, so I would say it's a great place to work. But at the same time, people may have different calling, and don't be stuck on, oh, I have done marketing, so I can't do anything else. Because finally, business problems are not solved by any particular functions. These are solved by people who have the aptitude, the acumen, and business understanding to solve it. And I would anchor for supply chain because these are the guys who really make things happen. These are the guys who make the product move from one place to another. So it's a great, fantastic, exciting place to be in. And after COVID, there are a lot of articles which are saying the next wave of CEOs are coming from supply chain functions. Which, if you recall, there was a time when CFOs used to become CEOs. Then there was a time when marketing and sales heads started becoming CEOs, and now the way the world is going, there are wars every other day. There are contingencies every other day. Supply chains are really becoming central in the boardroom discussions, and they may start taking CEO functions. So I would always say good time to be in supply chain.
Super, super. Yeah, so we share a number of commonalities as things start to evolve. I mean, number one, passion for operations and the belief that the true action is in operations. So
Yeah,
I had all along, right from my journey, long time back, I had been an operation guy, continue to be an operation guy. And I've had my own tryst with finance. I am a CFA myself. So
Lovely.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
I think we need a longer offline discussion, Professor.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We look forward to
Yeah.
So once again, students here, it's good to see faces. So if your circumstance permits, please switch on your videos. Ma'am, this session we are recording while we have a bunch of students right now here. Good number of students usually come back and watch the recording. So there are 1,000 odd students that to whom the link has been sent. So at some point of time, they would be watching it later on as well.
Professor, may I just take an urgent call? I'll just take 1 minute. Is that okay?
Yes, yes,
Go ahead.
yes. Yes, ma'am. Sure.
Sorry, my apologies. Yeah.
No
Let's
problem.
make something important.
We hope
Yeah.
all is well. No problems.
Yeah, all is well. Generally, when rain starts, then people start panic about their some or the other shipment. So, and then there are
Yeah.
escalations coming. Will these projects commission on time or not? Blah blah blah. So, anyways, yes,
No,
that's
this is
life in
this is
logistics.
this is a great live illustration for students to the world of logistics. I mean,
Yeah.
anything can happen at any time, and you must be prepared to take a call and
Yes.
do what is necessary. And this is what happens all the time in logistics, and that's why it's so action packed.
Absolutely.
So I want to jump to a question that is probably at the top of a number of students that are out here, which is you see, areas or functions such as maybe marketing or even finance, sometimes even HR. These are more how do I say, get the eyeball of the management or the customer, more front ending, right? So, and probably perhaps maybe more glamorous, maybe more accessible for growth and things like that. I mean, logistics, operations, supply chain, these sound like very back-end kind of jobs, and probably therefore not sufficient or fast enough growth. So with that, how do you see that? I mean, do you see the same way, or what are your thoughts?
No, I would. So I'll tell you how things are panning out in last few years. One is, so whenever a company grows from, let's say, a mid-size to large size, and they expand their manpower, two things are seen: whether a particular function is a cost function or a revenue function, right? Whether you are driving business for the company or you're a cost function. And if you see finance, HR, to some bit even marketing, are seen as primarily as cost functions. Supply chain depends. So in some of the industries, they are seen purely as cost functions, but something like e-commerce, where supply chain is as good as sales for them, because that's where they are the meat of the business, right? They are not seen as cost function. They are seen as a revenue driving function. So and as you can understand, you can appreciate the fact that whoever is driving revenue, who is driving the core value of the company, will always have more options to grow, will always get more money, more bonuses, more retention plans, versus what is seen as can be done away with, right? So if I see even today in my company, if there is a cost planning done, that okay, how many headcount we need where, always the revenue driving or the operations driving functions are given priority, because that's how you grow the company, while others take a back seat. And then if they still have budget, then that is released. So uh, the thought process that you're talking about, Professor, is when, when supply chain roles were only sitting in factories, right? When these are the times when primarily understanding of supply chain was somebody who's running the factory, running the go down. Why do we need to spend and go down? Because nobody sees what's there. So it can be in some godforsaken place where the cheapest labor, maybe even child labor, is deployed, and there is one local guy who's managing it, who should be the cheapest guy available, because those were the days when there was no branding, when a steel company, let's say a Tata Steel or a Jindal Steel, is the same thing. So whoever produces the cheapest is the king, and cheapest means cheapest factory, cheapest warehouse, cheapest labor, cheap minimum resources, and therefore the operations and supply chain guys should also be hired at the lowest cost and lowest designation. Today, that's not the case. So if you see, and I'm talking about now, the industry it's all about branding. It's all about, now most of the product companies are actually becoming service companies, right? And when it comes to service, operations is at the center of it. Because, for example, if I talk about Starbucks, right? Would you call it a coffee company? You can't call it a coffee company. Coffee is just one of the ways in which they are serving the customer. Because I may visit Starbucks just to because I like the ambience, I like the feel, I like the place where I can sit peacefully, maybe think through, work through something, or may just go there to relax. And I may or may not even order a coffee. I may order a sandwich and come back. So it's a place where they call themselves, second home for people. That's the place where somebody can feel at home, and they can relax, or they can work, or they can just meet up, socialize, whatever. Now, when you are turning a service company, then a service company operations is at the core. They are the people who are most valued. So, and even if I talk about something like a phone, while it's a product, it's the service, after sales service, how much you give on top of the product, which is what differentiates one product from another. Otherwise, features everybody can set. I mean, it's very easy to just reverse engineer a product and give it. So today, everybody is trying to differentiate on the basis of what happens after somebody buys a product, and therefore operations come at the core. So now we are in a very different era where even if I look at, let's say, even if I want to sell shampoo, which is a pure product, finally, whether the customer gets it from the Blinkit or the Swiggy in 10 minutes time or not, that's what will drive my sales, not how good my product is. Because whatever great product I make, somebody will copy it. So I can make an excellent product, and therefore again, then what happens is if I'm selling shampoo, how I'm selling it on different platforms. Is it available on the platforms all the time? Is the quality which they feel, packaging which they feel, price point which is there, because MRP also sometimes you see different on different platforms, whether the shelf life, whether how fresh it is. I mean, it's a 3-year manufacturing, but is every platform giving new stock, or somebody are selling obsolete stock? All these things is what experience drives, and therefore operations become more important than what it used to be years back.
Very well said. And I actually see that also in the big shift that has happened over last 1 decade in the curriculum of operations, logistics, and supply chain also. So previous decades, it was largely cost centric. I mean, how do you do things in the lowest possible cost? But no longer is that a driver for operations or supply chain that I see in terms of the curriculum. And how do you drive availability? How do you drive flexibility? How do you drive revenue? How do you drive lowest lead time and responsiveness? These are the questions that are asked, and you need to design operations. You need to design your logistics so that these factors, your service-driven characteristics, are made available to the customer, and that is
Yeah.
what is going to drive revenue rather than just good old branding alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I see a few questions here, which I'll try to now combine. One question, in fact, that keep coming from in various forums is that it sounds like logistics, supply chain subjects do require some prerequisite, backgrounds such as engineering are the best fit for one to pick logistics or supply chain as a specialization. Is that really the case? I mean, any prerequisites that make one a better logistics professional from an MBA standpoint as against any other?
Okay, I already told my journey. Well, I had done engineering, but whatever I studied in my college, I don't remember any of that, honestly, other than basic maths and very, basic stuff. So,
Okay.
of course, comfort with numbers should be there. That is generally there with engineers, but that doesn't mean, one can't have that, because it's just that in supply chain, generally the amount of data that one has to deal with in early part of career is high. And that's just because whenever you plan anything, whether you're planning the stocks or the raw material, the more granular you plan, that is at SQ level, date wise, week wise, location wise, seasonality, all put together, all of that will the more granular is the planning, the more likely that you will be better in your planning versus if you do macro level. And the more granular is the planning, the more is the data to deal with. But that's I would say the bigger skill which works in early part of supply chain career is Excel, just comfort with Microsoft Excel. That how handy it is for you to just extract basic pivot tables, reading data, how much of it is outlier, etc. Just basic handling of Excel sheet, I think, is more important than background in engineering. And I think it's just because it's become in a way, even people think that MBA also needs a prerequisite of engineering, just because too many engineers apply for MBA entrance, and then since more apply, more get selected, and it's so be. But as MBA students, they can appreciate that people who come from different walks like economics or even arts, they also do fairly well in MBA in their grades. Similarly, in career also, they would also do fairly well. Just one should not be averse to dealing with numbers, which sometimes I see in some of the people who are not from, let's say, maths or engineering background, they are. But if you're not averse and you're okay to deal with it, I don't think there is a difference between an engineer versus a
Absolutely. Yeah. So just so that the participants here are aware, I guess our existing current first batch in terms of engineers, I mean, my facts may be a little approximate here, but I guess of the total batch, 15 to 20% are only engineers. I mean, the rest are from various backgrounds, and they are all so far doing well, and we're pretty confident that they'll continue to do well. So engineering as such is not the point here, but as ma'am rightly said, the more comfortable you are with numbers, the easily you will understand the problem at hand. You will come with better solutions, and you also know the implications of the implementation of various solutions. So I guess that's some skill that you will need to sort of hone as you go along. Right?
And I would say that comfort with numbers, it's not just something related to supply chain. I mean, whether you're going finance, whether you go in sales, whether you go in marketing, because the fact is, when boardroom discussions happen, the first thing they would say is, please speak with data. Don't give your personal opinion. Don't give anecdotes. Don't give narrations. Please speak with data. So the base, I mean, it's if you want to get into any job, I think comfort with numbers is ready, unless you want to become a painter or an artist or a dancer, then fine. But if you want to get into any thing related to science fields, I think comfort with numbers is necessary. Yeah.
Okay. I will get to now one question that we can't do away with? I mean, we can't miss this question, which is, and that's asked by a student also here, is
Yeah.
that, all is fine, but, when it comes to recruiters, for the domain of logistics and supply chain, is it that, they give preference to male students? I mean, engineering you already covered, but is there a preference for male students, and therefore women students are at a disadvantage? I mean, is that what is there out in the today's logistics world in India?
I would say it's the other way around, that almost every decent company has a diversity agenda to meet. And it's not just because it's a part of HR target, because they realize that diversity makes the company more open-minded. Otherwise, if generally they say either if 10 people are agreeing with each other, then all of them are fools, most likely. And therefore, they need people who come with a different perspective, different attitude, different background, right? Of course, male, female diversity is one part of it. And then there are many other ways, which is again talking about whether you are from engineering or non-engineering background, arts field, blah, blah, blah. And so, in fact, for women candidates, if there are 10 women competing for an HR job versus women competing for supply chain jobs, by default, there are lesser women competing for supply chain jobs. That's the reality. So whoever are competing have a better chance of getting it. And that's I'm talking pure numbers right now, because legacy is such that just that there is a preconceived notion that women should not take supply chain, they should take, let's say, HR or marketing, etc. So those women who choose to get into supply chain have an advantage. That's one. Second, why when we say male versus female, the simple thing is that supply chain needs odd hours at times. It does need traveling. It does need traveling to locations which are not bad, but it's just assumed that they don't want to force a woman to travel. For example, Bhiwandi in Mumbai. Now, if I hire someone and if I ask her, are you comfortable with traveling to Bhiwandi? And she says, no, it's a dangerous area, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. Then I would think twice. But women who are good to travel, who are, and it doesn't mean you have to be in unsafe situations, because company would provide car, or company would provide, sometimes even one of your colleagues would be there, because generally traveling happens in a group because you have to make decisions on the spot, etc. But if somebody is completely averse to all this, then it becomes a choice for the employer to say, okay, I don't want to put a woman in a situation which she's uncomfortable. But otherwise, there is nothing which stops them from hiring a woman. So it's nothing like that. It's not in employer's mind. But if ideally, girls themselves have to make it clear that I travel a lot, I don't have an issue, and I understand there are calls which come at 8 p.m. as well, and as long as I'm getting a work-life balance which is which I can flex my work at times, I can flex my personal life at times as and when needed, then it's okay. It doesn't matter. So that applies to both men and women, because even men sometimes may say, I'm not open to travel. I have a small child at home and I have to cater to my wife, blah, blah, blah. I mean, why not? Men can also say that. So it's an open question. It's just that it's preconceived notion. So if girls are asked those questions by an employer, or even if they are not asked, I think they should upfront and say that I understand these are the part of a logistics role and I'm okay to take that.
Well said. Again, so the restriction or constraint is not from the recruiter standpoint, but it is self-imposed. I mean,
yes.
How open am I as a professional to be able to do job that is required to be done? And
absolutely,
either male or female, nobody wants to be in an unsafe situation, and that is a strict no in any case. I mean, therefore, if one is ready, I guess
the
sky is the limit.
Absolutely.
I would take it that way. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Picking from one of the questions from the response that you gave, the cost world, and so there was an era when the entire operations team, supply chain team has to be a low cost team. Now things have changed, and it has operations and supply chain has come to the forefront in terms of it being able to drive revenues for the company. So now taking a cue from there, has the salary levels for supply chain professionals also commensurately increased, and it is as lucrative as the other functional areas are?
Indeed.
What is the current picture as far as remuneration for LSCM professionals are concerned in different sectors?
Yeah, so I would say by default, sales are paid the highest, and that will stay forever. That can't change because sales are the front runners in driving revenue. Then comes
but good part of it is their variable also. Sorry for interrupting.
Yes,
good part
so
of their will.
Yeah, so generally I'm talking about them when you add sales to incentives. And at the same time, sales has its own challenges because you are as good as your last quarterly target. That also applies to sales, which while for other functions, it's there are more areas of improvement than just your target. So sales, there's always a disproportionate amount, not disproportionate, rather it's a proportionate amount which is spent on sales because it's purely driven by how much revenue you bring to the company. I would say at the second level, marketing and supply chain are somewhere at par. So it's not like, earlier marketing was at the top and sales, the supply chain was nowhere. Now they are at par. Finance, depending on company to company, like for example, in banks, of course, the finance professionals are paid very well. But I'm talking about my field, which is the consumer product business I'm talking about. There, I would say finance, HR, all other IT, all other support functions are then at the third level. So that's how the ranking is. If you look at in Amazon or any e-commerce companies, operations are paid the highest. There's nothing like a sales function per se. I mean, they are primarily operations, and then there is marketing and finance, etc. So in all e-com or or logistics companies, of course, the operations guys are paid the highest.
So in fact, so therefore there are good set of growing sectors where operations and logistics folks are actually paid higher than the rest of the folks.
Yes.
Okay. So folks, we have another 15 minutes here. If you have more questions, let them let them keep coming. While I have my own set of questions, I'll keep going. But if you have any questions, so just shoot them across. So my next question to you, Dr. Supply Chain. So so my next question is, how does your day look like? I mean, what is it that that gets you going? I mean, where do you get the kick from in your day-to-day life as a LSCM professional?
Okay, the good part is no 2 days are the same. It seems cliche to say, but that's a fact. So some amount of time goes in, basic report reviews, performance reviews, etc. If everything is on track, any red flags, blah, 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 number delivery. So we do a weekly check. And also some numbers have to be checked alternate days. Some numbers have to be checked weekly. Some have to be checked monthly. So that takes maybe 20% of the time. Now I'm talking about there is a difference in the time that I'm spending today as a leader, and when I was as a manager, the time spent was different, and maybe in early part of the career it's different. And then when I was a manager, I was spending 80% of the time in running operations, which is actually making things move. Now today I have a team to do that, and I spend maybe 50% of the time in. So I can't solve problems, but I remove hurdles when they try to solve problems, which are internal, external, whether it's policy related, whether it's approvals related, whether it's aligning the stakeholders. So today, I think most of the time goes in a way in debating and convincing, 50% of the time, which is if a decision has to be taken, which is again, operations related, that do we take this call, do we start this warehouse or not, blah, blah, blah. So I'm today as a leadership level, I'm not running warehouses. My team is making sure the operations are getting done. But whether we do it or not, that go, no go kind of discussions is what, in fact, today I had some 4 go, no go meetings, which is to do or not to do, and debating, discussing, showing data, throwing data, analyzing, etc. That 50% of time, and then another 30% goes in preparing for those meetings, which is to say, and that's where I was talking about Excel sheet data, because when you present a case to someone, like I had to present a case to my MD today, that this business we should go ahead with. Why? And then there will be a business case presented around that. How do I articulate that with numbers, with some, because there will always be, and the fact is that there is never 100% data available to prove a point. You always have to make a case that you have some proxy data, you have some past cases, you have some future predictions, and some risk nets which you create, that okay, if this backfires, then we will do this. If this backfires, if we will do this. Worst case, it's not looking so bad, so maybe we can go ahead. So 30% of time goes in preparing all this. And of course, this keeps varying. Then there are times when there are management meetings. So then 100% of time goes in making presentations where business cases are made, blah, blah, blah. And there are times when I spend 100% of time in firefighting, because which is for the clients. If there are operational failures, then there are days when this entire day, meetings after meetings, we are just discussing how do we get the operations back. So it's very different. But what I'm telling you is at an overall level, if I say what is my job profile, these are the 3 things I'm supposed to do. And of course, there are times when as a leader, you have to pep up your team when they feel, everything is falling apart, nothing is working. Then there are sometimes you just have to spend entire day talking to the team and motivating. And because that's an important part of being a leader, that how do you charge up your team to make sure your next day is better than yesterday. So yeah.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, as you at the entry level, your work mix is will be at a certain level, and as you keep moving up, the kind of.
Yeah.
So now my question is, related to the jargon, the thing that is doing the rounds, Gen AI, right? I mean, it's all over the place, and a lot of work that you just now described, either being done by your teams, or for that matter, part of what you do, is to do with data, is to do with analyzing data. So, I mean, is this thing with the fixation with Gen AI? Is that I mean, what is your take on that? I mean, and from a student standpoint, what does this mean, the whole thing? I mean, is it replacing good amount of what the current managers are doing? Does that mean that they need to focus more in terms of working more closely with Gen AI? I mean, what is your total take on that?
Okay, it's a good question. And see, the fact is, there are 3 things with data. There is data, there is information, and then there is insight. Okay, data is just dumb. Okay, so many days, so much we sold at so many places, blah, blah, blah. Information is okay. That means we are selling more in Mumbai and Delhi and Bangalore, and we are selling less. So that's the information which will come out of it. Insight can be that these 3 places we are already selling high. Maybe the marketing spend should go in other places. That's an insight. Or the insight can be that these places we are strong, so leverage on our strength. Insight can be many, because from the information. Now, from data to information, AI can convert. Which is, if you give a dump of your, if you give SAP access to whatever, some AI platform which can pull out data and will create excellent MIS sheet, excellent pivot tables. But what you do with that human beings will have. And therefore, the analytical acumen has to be developed. So maybe, what I said, comfort with data. So you may not need to know the Excel formulas that I worked with in my early part of the career, because maybe AI will do it. But once you have created that, then how to make decisions out of it, that human beings will have to do. And that's what probably the the next generation of professionals should work on. But at the same time, unless you have done ABC, you wouldn't know what to do with this pivot. Like why
Exactly.
if you're thrown a pivot sheet, just to know whether this pivot is taking the average of the sale or it is taking the max of the sale or the mean of the sale, at least they should know what it is, what they are reading. Because if they read average as max, their decision making will go completely wrong. So
Absolutely.
it's good to know. They don't have to be excellent at it, because AI will do it for them. And when you're saying the replacement of the jobs, see, I always say there was a time when industrialization started, they thought the laborers will go out of job, and but the fact is good that industrialization happened and people are doing more meaningful jobs. I mean, factories are run on machines, but people are doing something better than that. So all this data crunching and Excel sheet work, good if human beings don't have to do it. It's not glamorous, it's not fun to do. It's just labor work. And if
repetitive stuff.
It's repetitive stuff. So if people can do more value add, it's better. And the fact is, it will drive efficiency in the companies, that they will have lesser people doing it. But at the same time, then that will mean that they will be able to produce goods at cheaper cost, because there'll be less deployment, which means you will spend less, which means you will have money to do something better. So the resources, from whether it's from people or whether it's from companies, they will be deployed in something better. I mean, otherwise, we could have lived the early man's life and everybody must be making tires and, making fire out of stones, and could have been, I mean, we all are doing something better because we have given all of that to experts in that field. So I don't see a labor challenge around it, but I see that one has to do more value added stuff and not just, the data.
Scale up and pick more brainy stuff, more insightful stuff. More valuable stuff, perhaps.
And in fact, seeing AI as an enemy, master AI, because the fact is that everybody wants to do AI, but not many people know. It's a fact that it's a buzzword and everybody's saying. But if you ask why AI, how does it work? People are not able to answer level 2, level 3. They just know what is there on Instagram stories. Really. So
this is good, coming from a industry veteran such as you, because there is just way too much of what is the word for it? I mean, too much of exaggerated buzz around it. So particularly students may get misled, and that is where we as academicians have to be extremely careful about.
Absolutely. Like a few years back, blockchain was the buzzword in supply chain. Everybody was selling blockchain. I have never seen anything in blockchain till date. I've been talking to so many people. People sold blockchain. People bought it, but I never saw anything run with it. It was a great technology, great concept. But similarly, they say we will have AI enabled supply chain, but what does it mean? Like, what will it do? Will it produce for you? Will it forecast for you? Whatever it forecasts, somebody will have to see whether it's making sense or not. And today also, all said and done, your SAP tools were supposed to be doing forecasting. They are doing, but the fact is that some human being is still vetting the data, because machine is garbage in, garbage out. So is AI, garbage in, garbage out. So.
True.
Sorry to interrupt. We have one question from the student.
Okay.
Have you seen any real changes in hiring or leadership opportunities for women in logistics in the past few years?
Change, like I said, that the roles have expanded. So and that's again not just for women. If the opportunities are there of different kinds, then it will apply to men and women both. And of course, if there is equal cerebral acumen, then both will get it. Because like I said, again, don't think it's women in supply chain. We are all employees, we are all professionals. So let's not tag it as women and men as much as possible. So there is the opportunities, like I said earlier, were mostly related to factory running, operations, etc., warehousing management, which is again at site. While now there are a lot of opportunities which are available, which are there in which can be done remotely. When I say remotely, it means we can do it in office, which can do in a not doesn't need to be at the side. For example, now demand planning, supply planning, procurement, all these are very, very important functions. So operations is just one part of it, but forecasting has become very, very crucial. Even risk management in supply chain is itself is a very, very core function. Quality assurance, that again is a very, very core function, and all these don't need the so-called ancient way of working in supply chain, that in dirty warehouses, etc. And this is expanding the amount of opportunities which are there. And even if I look at the what has prevented women from going in supply chain, which is the unsafe travel conditions or unsafe work conditions, that doesn't apply in these roles, and therefore there is definitely a different trend. In fact, I've seen in planning, I see women doing very well, very well. Maybe because by default, women are taught how to be a planner in the families. I see in demand planning and supply planning role, procurement heads. I see a lot of women being procurement heads, maybe because we are used to bargaining. So, or again, it may be a perception, because I see some of the men also doing better bargaining than me when we go shopping. So, so again, it's a perception, but I see procurement also, a lot of women leading those roles. So yeah, these are some of the functions where women can excel.
Thank you.
Sure, ma'am. So we have 3 minutes. I have one last question of you. So, and I see no other question here in the chat. So, and I think this is quite relevant, probably in the top of the mind of most students here. Say you come for recruitment at IMT for this batch of students, PGDM, LSM students. What is it that you would look for when you interview our students?
So, okay, one thing before I said why I say this is we are living in very fast changing times, and I can say that I don't know if whatever I have learned will be applicable tomorrow. Will I have to relearn, right? So one is people who come with that hunger to learn and say, yes, I know, I don't know, but I'm ready to learn. I think that desire to learn, and that applies to people at all levels. Probably if I have to hire a CEO for, well, I'm not hiring a CEO, but even if I have to hire somebody at very senior level for my own company, then also I look for these qualities, because complacency and know-it-all attitude is not good in today's world, not at all. And if you're starting your career, then definitely not. Second is how, of course, the basics, like, can you analytical ability. If I throw some very basic data, can you read it? Can you understand it? So comfort with data I've mentioned multiple times. And honestly, I'm seeing this, for whatever reason, this analytical ability as a acumen decreasing in the next generation professionals. I don't know why. Maybe because there is a lot of dependence on everything is so handy that you are not used to calculating in your mind, or you are not used to quickly summarizing data. Like if you are thrown few things, this much sale is there, where to invest, and I may not have a pen and paper. Can I process it in my mind? Because generally, phone is very handy to do things. We are not used to using our brain as much as we used to do years back, and therefore that tendency reducing, which is a must. So if I see students who can process, who can analytically analyze and articulate, I will give them preference. What I see,
just calculation, it is connection, right?
It is
that
connection.
Is what.
Yeah.
So that is what is happening at the
analyzing. I would say purely analyzing, which is to say, and problem solving. If I think problem solving is a very, very crucial and always needed at all levels in all industry. That problem solving mindset. So there are people who just state why it can't be done, and there are people who say it can be done. Let me just figure it out. And they will throw some options, and it's an attitude gap, and it can be called optimistic versus pessimistic, but pessimism is based on just emotional state, while I say it's just attitude. Okay, there is a way out. Let me just figure it out, and which again, I see there are go-getters and there are people who are like, oh, forget it. Yeah, I can't do it. It's not going to happen. So I call it loser's attitude. And if I see that, then I would, I don't need them in my group.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Thanks a lot, ma'am. We are a minute past to 8:30 already. Very, very valuable insights. I'm sure our students will get to see more of you and perhaps interact with you also in the days to come. So students, those of you who your friends who probably have missed the session, encourage them to have a watch at the recorded session, and you can reach out to the admissions team if you have any specific questions. We'll be happy to answer them. Right?
Yes.
So wish you all a good night, ma'am. Thank you
Thank you.
for your time.
Thank
Nandini,
you.
ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah.
ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for more
Thanks.
insight.
Thanks, Professor. Thanks, Nandini.
Thank you,
Happy to
ma'am.
be here. Great.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Good night,
Good
ma'am.
night, everybody.
Good night, sir.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for joining today.
Bye.
Thanks.